Welcome back to the next video for an introduction to level design. So we're going to do a new world. So just go here, new level, and do a new basic level. And after you create a new basic level, you should just have the core lighting and starting point in the middle of this platform. So you should have this little stack. This is something you want to become very familiar with. The main one is you have your player start right down here. So there's your player start capsule. You see the bottom of the capsule should be touching the ground. It should never be embedded down in. You see bad size, don't do bad size. You have the skylight, which we'll talk about some more. Right here you have your sky atmosphere, and you have the directional light. This is really important to begin with. This is the sun overhead. You see I have a nice little sunset happening already, which is kind of nice. Just go to the rotate tool. You'll see the arrow and rotate it so that it is not going below the horizon, but also you don't want to have a high noon type of lighting either. So let's look and see what high noon looks like. Everything's going to be kind of washed out and hard to read. Then you have your volumetric cloud. And then the other thing you'll see in there should be your static mesh for the sky sphere. That's overhead. You have your volumetric cloud, and this is your basic. So we're going to do landscape though and do some organic modeling. So far you've had the blocks and you've been doing some blocks, some grid like. So let's zoom way up here. I have my speed turned way up to like 8 so that I can uh, right and left mouse button lets you go up and down. Left mouse button by itself goes forward, back, lets you turn, and then right mouse button lets you just orbit and look around. So left and right, just left, left, right. And those clicks aren't showing up in the click reader, so that's why I'm calling those out. Okay, so Shift 1 is your basic selection modes. Shift 1, Shift 2, Shift 3 are the main ones we're going to explore early on. So Shift 2 is going to switch us over to landscape mode. You'll see you have place actors, should be part of your main selection tab. Hit Shift 2 on the keyboard, the landscape pops open, and there's our landscape. So it should remember the defaults from the last time. The default there before is 8 and 8. I'm going to leave it in 16 and 16 and hit create. And there we have now created a landscape. And if we zoom in here and look at this from the 4 viewport mode, you'll see, if I come in a little closer over here, that if I do something with the landscape here, if I do some brushing on the ground, you'll see I can't really see much. Now that's because we have high noon um, lighting going on. So that's the very first brush here, sculpt. Here's your brush strength. So mine's at 1 right now. Your brush size is here, so you can kind of see the gray. It's bigger and smaller. So, 1,600 centimeters, it's pretty big for the hills. You can start seeing a little bit, but you still can't see much. I'm just clicking and dragging, or just click, click, click. So you can click a little and then click, drag. You could turn the strength way down to say 10%, and then you'll see you get a real subtle little pull. So if you want to just do little hills, but if you want to get it sudden, that you can leave the strength up nice and high if you want to do that. And here's your brush fall. If you see an inner and outer ring, so here's your brush fall off. So it's a big fall off. You see there's like a little one in the middle that kind of fans out to the second ring, that little white circle around my mouse clicker. So play around with those. There's also the brush tip size here. You can bring in your own custom alphas, which we will look at later. Definitely fun. Here's a bit of a sharper linear fall off. Here's a smooth fall off. So if you want a sharp linear fall off, we go over here. If I click and press, you see it comes up to the top there. And, but what I wanted to show you there is that if I go back to Shift 1, grab my directional light, and hit F on the keyboard, there we go. So you'll see there's a arrow sticking out. Let me just raise this up a little bit so you can see. There's the little white arrow hanging down from the middle. So let's use that. Let's look at it from the sideways view as much as possible. So this is going to bring it up and down here. So there we go. So it's almost at high noon. And let's angle it the other way over that way too. There you go. So either way, whatever makes sense. If you go to the 4 viewport and we hit F on the keyboard and kind of zoom out, you can see, I like to have north or up be the north view on there. So if I come over here and drag just straight on yellow, it's going to bring it down that way, and you can show lit. There you go. So the shadow's casting that way. You can also move it here, this way and this way. to get to see which way it's actually. So I'll go perfectly north on this just to make it easier on myself. And we'll see where the shadows are cast. So yeah, it's actually this way. So this way is going to be my north, it looks like. And let's see if that makes sense. Yes, let me see the lighting updates a bit more. And we can get a little bit closer and see. There's the arrow, so it's facing straight towards us. There we go. And the settings down here in the directional light, you'll see in rotation are right over here. So it's ready to go. Let's go ahead and go back to the 4 viewport. So maximize 4 viewport, and then here's our, if you want to just work in top mode, if you want to just work in side mode, back view, whatever, you can change the viewports there. Okay, back to the sculpting tool, Shift 2. So let's do something interesting for our path. So let's just do a little canyon valley. So go to sculpt here, and I'm just gonna use the regular sculpt tool and just click and drag some nice big hills to do kind of a trail, a little canyon valley trail that goes off into La La Land here towards the horizon. So I'm gonna, if you zigzag your valley enough, you won't see the horizon off in the distance. I'm just clicking and dragging across here and basically just using it's like a bas relief 2.5D sculpture, kind of making that curve one way and then the other. And let's say off to the side over here, we have a great big, let's go, let's see, brush size 8,000. Let's try that again. 1, 2, 3, enter. There we go. So there's a great big brush. So boom. So there's our volcano, so to speak. And do some little hills around. So now I'm going really fast here. I'm just kind of making sure there isn't a steep drop off into the nothing, into the void, on the edge of our map. Right now, you don't want to be boxed in by that, so you want to make it look more natural. But this is how I usually would block something in. And you could put cityscape pieces. You could use your blocking tools, whatever. But just something. So I'm just clicking really fast, left clicking and dragging around, and boom, that was pretty easy. Okay, let's do the, I'll leave erase for later. Erase will take you down to absolute zero. Instead of your just starting point 0, it'll take you to 0, 0. So let's see. If I go back in here, if I make my brush a little bit more reasonable in size, there we go, and I click one time, see it's bringing it back to 0 on the erase. But one thing I noticed is when I first put this in is it didn't put the landscape at 0. Like there's my player start. Where'd my player start go? Let's go Shift 1. Let's click on the player start. So you really want to know where everything is when you're very first starting. You want to know your scale. You want to know your positional. And look at that. It's the capsule's half buried. That is bad. No, no. If I go down a little farther, you'll see that flag that if I hit play, I'm going to start off in the middle of the level. That means it's broken, literally. So we'll go to the side view. We're going to make sure we're in Shift 1, make sure we're in selection mode. Let's go to the very corner of this landscape from the side view or back view, and let's see where it is. So if I go back to my move brush, which I use the space bar to go from select, move, rotate, scale, or QWERTY keys, Q, W, E, R. W, E, R should be the same in almost every 3D app. And leave the snaps on. Right now my grid snap set to 5. Let's set it maybe to something more like 50. And you'll see there's 2 there, so 100 should work. So yeah, so this is 100 centimeters, 1 meter up off the ground, which is, yeah, about exactly cutting the head off, cutting our character in half. So let's make sure it's dragged all the way down to 0. And now we see Z fighting. So Z fighting is when 2 polygons share the same space. So the landscape here at 0 at the starting point is clipping with our floor static mesh actor. So you'll see the little yellow bound of the static mesh actor. So they're both exactly at 0, 0 world space. You can see it better right here. So there's the little floor. So I have 2 options here. I could raise the floor up a little, or I could lower my landscape down a little. So I'm going to leave the landscape at 0. I'm going to leave the floor at 0 as well. And what I'm going to choose to do is go into the landscape tool here. So there's my block. So if you're using your grid pieces, your man-made blocks, or if it just makes sense to use geometry blocks for whatever, even if it's organic still, I like to go into the landscape here, hit Shift 2, go back to landscape brush, and I like to push it down just below 0 a tiny bit. So I'm going to hold down Shift, and I'm going to just push outside that block area. There it goes. So it raises up, and then Shift pushes back down again. And you see it just goes below that block just a little bit. So Shift pushes down, and I'm kind of revealing the block around my starting point, my playable area as I go. So maybe this is going to have some architecture, like a little plaza, foyer, or whatever. Um, but what I want to do is I want to control this. I want it to be flat, but to a certain kind of point that I want to use to do my player pathing here. So that brings us to the flatten brush. The flatten brush will take whatever your original click starting point is. So let's say I want to use the click point right here to the side where my crosshairs are, just to the side of the block. So just below 0, but not quite going way down low. So if I start there and I click and I hold and I drag across the surface, it's going to bring all the polygons flat to that starting click point. So it's a really nice way to establish your positioning, your player pathing, and where exactly you want that player path's altitude or height point in the game to be for your starting point. So I'm going to go around this platform. So that way, if I hit start and play off of this, let's go ahead and give it a shot again. Now my capsule's on there, and you'll see if I run off to the side here that I'll stop. I'll drop off that positional point, and that I'm going to test my jump heights, right, that we did with the grid videos in the first one. So if I drop down here, you'll see I can't walk up on it, but I can just barely jump back over the top of that. So if I get a little running start here and click jump, whew, it's really close though. So let's go up a little tiny bit higher. So I'm going to just pick a little bit higher starting point right there, click drag over, and there we go. Maybe a tiny bit higher, click drag there, pull over. So there we go. So here's my kind of comfortable landscape 0 point that I'm going to use the flatten brush for and go around that and make sure that I don't have any pits. So you want to avoid sharp peaks and valleys or jagged areas in your initial play area, so that way you don't have to worry about the player capsule getting messed up and stuck right away. The other thing I use the flatten brush for is to do secondary paths. So here's our primary path, right? So we're going to go out here, and I can leave that little soft point here. But I know if I'm going to go back up to 0, I can start here, and that'll bring things back to actual 0. But I got to remember, if I place any blocks in there and their faces are at 0 too, they're going to Z-fight on there. So just something to be aware of. Let's make our brush nice and small now. Let's do our secondary path. So using the flatten brush. So make the brush a bit smaller, but big enough to be a nice path. And if you need to, you can play with the radial fall off. So if I crank that up a bit, you see the radial fall off's greater. If I go way down, there's less of a radial fall off. So that means that wherever I click, drag, start, it's going to bring that up. So here's my secondary path. I have like a little terrace, mezzanine level. Think vertically early on in your game design. You're in 3D space. Don't think too flat. Don't do what Khan did in Star Trek. Wrath of Khan, thinking two-dimensionally. This is 3D chess, folks. You want to have nice, and let's do another terrace next to that. So let's say this whole path, although it has two different Z heights on there, that you can actually maybe get up from one area to the other. And then we'll go to the side over here and start at a high click point and bring that up, and that's going to make more of a canyon valley. It's going to block in the player. Right, let's see if we can get over there. There we go. That should work nicely. Let's do something similar on the other side. Let's do another terrace area, but let's make it out of reach. Let's say, yeah, well, here's another little terrace you can see up here. Hinting, foreshadowing, perhaps, can you do a playback? Is it something you're going to get to eventually? Is there any people up there? Is there something animated up there? Is that significant, or is it just a backdrop piece that adds flavor to your level? We don't know yet. These are the kind of questions we're asking ourselves of. So right away, the flatten brush becomes super helpful. So let's go to the smooth brush and let's get rid of some of these jaggedy areas. So I'm just going to kind of soften, and you'll see the grids are stretching, and that means that the polygons are actually stretched across for the top down. So the texture from top down is perfectly flat. So it's like a 2D projection, screen projection. From the side view, when you pull them up, you're going to be pulling those UV coordinates. So usually this is where you do what's called shelling. So shelling is when you put static meshes over a vertical surface, a flat surface, like it could be a plane or it could be landscape, that you need to have some physics and architectural or some 3D mesh detail as your cap pieces or your shell pieces. So shelling and capping across UV stretched pieces that are associated for your terrace landscape, that's a pretty standard procedure that you want to walk through shelf. But I'm just going to kind of get rid of some of those jagged. I'll leave this extreme jagged area here kind of as an example. Um, but let's look at how to join these up fast. So you could smooth this out and make a little ramp here, but the ramp tool is really made for that. So the ramp tool is pretty awesome. Just the keys on accident there, my bad. So if I hit the ramp tool and I click drag here and I go over to the side to this ramp right there, it's going to actually, when I hit enter, it's going to very fluidly pull up a nice smooth gradient there between the starting point and the end point within the landscape. This is super useful. So let's go over here and do another one. So I'm up over here. You can see the width of it's pretty crazy right now. It's like 2,000. Let's drop it down to like, I don't know, 200. So 2 meters, right? So I click drag here and it looks like that starting point. I click on that and then click drag again. There we go. So if I click on which node you want to be the start, so I click there and then click on the secondary node and then click to where you want it to go. So you just kind of hop around your level and go, okay, where do I want my start point? I want my start point here. I want my end point from there to here. And then once, if I think that's good, I can turn up the width on here and the ramp radius and hit enter. Oops, make sure I activate the viewport first and hit enter. And there we go. So you have a nice, perfectly smooth ramp that goes between the terrace points. And maybe that would create like a bit of a disconnect right there. Maybe that's not how I want the ramp to go. So I'll just hit undo for that and we'll bring this back down again to the ground level. So I'll click there. So if you activate the node, click one time, go to where you want it to end, click one time, hit enter. There we go. Go to the starting node, click one time the start point, go to the end node, activate it, go to where you want it to end, click one time, hit enter, and there you go. So I have a series of ramps. So you could easily do a zigzag ramping piece there. And for that, let's take our player start. So I'm going to go over here. I'm going to grab the player start and go back to shift one if I want to, and bring it over to the edge here so I have an easier time getting to the playable area. I'm going to hit play, and there we go. So now I can go over here and I can go smoothly from the static mesh to the ramp, and then I can drop down here and I can see now, while it's not step up on enabled, like stairs would be, it is an easy little hop jump to get through there. And it does relatively transition smoothly here from the side. You can see what the angle slope is on there. All these settings, of course, are accessible. If I run over here, I can see there's my 2 ramps ahead. So I could have come up to the secondary path from here or there, or I could join it from the beginning, right? So this is what you should have mapped out in your papers. You have your starting point from right here on this block. You have your primary path, which is the wide canyon. You have the secondary path, which is accessible in 2 points from here, and then later on down the line on that secondary ramp, which then continues up to the tertiary point. What you could consider up here, you could consider this a continuation of the secondary path, or you could, if you keep expanding from up here, you could create this, flesh this out as a tertiary point, a third possible path if you wanted to make that accessible. So here's the drop from up here. So I'm kind of looking around, getting a good lay of the land, and so far pretty happy with it. So let's escape out of there and continue. Okay, so let's get the dramatic lighting. So I clicked on the directional sun. I hit the spacebar to my move, and I'm going to rotate it down. I'm just going to drop it down 1, 2. There we go. You can see it get a little darker. You can see a little bit more atmosphere. Let's go to 1 more, 3. So that's about as far as you can go. You can see on the vertical snap there. And now we have some God rays peeking out over the edge from the atmosphere, hitting the canyon. You see you get some nice shadows coming through both sides, and now it's looking a little more interesting, right? You got that lot more atmosphere as the sun goes down. You can see there's a little orb in the sky over there. and everything's looking okay from around. One thing I do need to do is finish blocking in this level, so we don't want the player to accidentally escape and go anywhere over there that they should not be. So in order to do that, very, very easy. I'm just going to go back into the landscape tool, hit the flatten brush, and select a point that I know is way too high for the player to get to, and click drag that around my starting area. So there we go. So I'm just blocking it in really fast. And whether you want that to be cliffs or not doesn't really matter at the moment. I'm just kind of playing around. So you think of this as your sketching tool, like your sketch sculpting all this. So every time I click drag a new start area, it's going to come back around. I can make my brush bigger. So right now it's at 300, which is really tiny. Let's go nice and big and start high. Say over here, there we go. So that was fast. And then maybe even higher over there, that's faster. So there you go. So now behind us, we have this ridge, and I can keep, playing with that with terrace. I can mix in my large sculpt brush from over here, and just being really conscious of my beginning player to not accidentally cover that all up. So there we go. So I'm just using the regular sculpt, and then mixing in some shift, push it back down a little, and then go back to smooth and just knock all this down a little bit. Smooth is really destructive, so just be aware. You probably want to use smooth at a bit lower intensity for some. If you have any shapes in there you like, turn it down because it will just annihilate the majority of your detail that you've added. If you've added something in there you like, smooth will wipe it out in just a couple clicks. So I'll go smaller here and kind of smooth in. I'll go to the edge here of the cliffs, and I'm going to leave a sharp one there to do a demo, and we'll continue with the next one. Okay, so the next brush on here we have is erosion and hydro erosion. So we've looked at flatten, we've looked at a ramp, we've looked at erosion. So erosion is going to create like this interesting um, kind of effect that is, I guess it's hard to say. It needs some like larger mountain. So let's actually come back to erosion and hydro erosion, because those are really where we're getting down to the visual quality of the level more so than, hydro erosion's like water is going to knock down the high points first, and it's going to create little rivulets and actually work the way that water erosion would work naturally in a level, which is pretty neat tool to use. But it's something that is more for the world builder and the visual. So you see, I get this one way in the background here. Click on that. And I just click and drag in large areas here. Let's crank the tool way up. There we go. So there's our hydro erosion. See, it kind of it softens the top, and then it rivulets down in the edges where the water would actually be eroding through. So it's a pretty badass tool to just capture off the side of these hills. It immediately creates some interest realistically in the valley areas, like where all the water is going to run through these environments. It's a little bit too large. Let's drop that back down. In our playable area, again, you got to be careful. This is just the fake backdrop stuff we're doing, but you want to be really careful going overboard with this tool anywhere near your player start or your other areas. So there you go. I like it though. Regular erosion is just winds, just woof. Regular erosion, just like adios. It just like totally chopped the tops of the hills down. It gets like the landslide esque, like fresher landslides, like way off in the distance. These landslides that have occurred. So where the sun's hitting the majority for your visual cues for your backdrop, you can kind of raise and lower those up. Woof! But it really gets rid of. So you want to use erosion for the top areas. You want to kind of create some interest there, and then go back over with hydro erosion and kind of let the rivulets kind of carve in on those. So these are neat. I mean, there's some good landscape brushes like this available too in ZBrush. I go back in this saw, but kind of save that for another conversation. Go back to tool strength for soften and go way down to like 0.1 something, and just softly hit and make sure that I don't see too much jagged. If you see any tessellation, like triangulated jaggeds on your landscape, you want to get rid of those jagged because they look really off. They're off-putting unless you're doing like a pixel 3D pixel art jaggedy type world. There we go. So I'm just clicking lightly And any disc moon, any like brush marks, like half moon brush marks, you want to get rid of those as well because those also look really bad. So yeah, just a few click drags there, and the retopo visibility, blueprint mirror, reflect copy. Like we'll do some selections and paste, but that's really the heart of it for now. I think if I wanted to finish this level off and come around the side here and have like a path into the volcano, let's do that. So I'm going to go to the flatten brush right here. I'm going to go really small and crank it way down and maybe play with the fall off a little bit, just leave it like halfway where it was. And right in the side of the volcano here, let's just carve right in. So I'm going to fly way in here, go up, and wherever my starting point, remember, it's going to be my click entry. I'm going to go inside this hill, this mountain, and just kind of brush back and forth so that it's not too insanely steep. Go in the side here, and I'm just going to go from the top down. I'm going to carve and just do little soft circular brush strokes till I get that path solid all the way from here into the middle of the mountain. And again, this right and mouse button to go back and forth, and just left mouse button by itself to go forward and back. There we go. And just carve off the center of this. I want to do like a real volcano base, White Plume Mountain, Joe versus the volcano, kinds of fun, uh, adventuring, going to a temple or something, drop the ring of power, whatever. There's all kinds of fun analogies for volcanoes. So if I carve that out and then I zoom back out and look at that, you'll see it did a pretty good job making it volcano-like. There we go. Now, I haven't done the extra work of making it more volcano-like from the outside, but we can go and do that up around the edges here. So if I go to the top here, and let's go to regular erosion, I get to start at the top of my hill up here, and let's crank the strength back up again, and let's crank the size back up a little bit more. There we go. And I go to the edge here, see it's going to go right to that edge, and it's going to erode down and kind of make it look more realistic in terms of the slope integrity. So if I go start here and I go all the way down, aside from my volcano, just see and just brush back and forth. Maybe make the brush even bigger and just go for it. There we go. And just push down. So it should slope an arc upward right to the volcano side. So I'll just do a few more here. One over here, two. I got to watch out for my secret passage that I'm developing here. So maybe it's something where you don't even see the ravine from certain camera angles that would make it truly like a hidden volcano. I'm just clicking and dragging out. And as I click drag out, it's going to kind of give it more of that Mount Fuji-esque kind of classic slope. Control right click. Right click WASD keys, excuse me. Bring that up here. There it goes, pushing down. Okay, whoops. And so, yeah, so see it jumped up and carved that little faster than I wanted it to right there. So if that gets to the edge and I need to reestablish that side of the volcano, but see how nice the lighting helps us see what we're doing. So let's go back and let's bolster some of this back up again. So I kind of wiped it out. So it's a sculpting technique. It's really one of the reasons I love landscape and world building so much, because you kind of get to sculpt the world, you get to sculpt the earth, and studying lots of different biomes and terrain types is really a fun exercise. There we go. So maybe I want the inside of that volcano to be not so broad. You see it's getting a little lumpy. It's okay. Keep going. Just kind of bring up the sides here a little bit better. Making sure I'm trying to catch some light, trying to make sure this thing isn't completely shadowed, so make it really a lot of interesting hills and buildups to go into the top of this volcano, right? Okay, so let's go to the top over here in the middle and go back to my flatten brush. Make sure the size is reasonable. And make sure the fall off is reasonable, like a little less fall off. Go. and right click, WASD key back in here. Let's start at the top of the peak of this thing again, maybe even a little bit smaller. There we go. And that's 4 meters, so that's not bad. So then I'm just going to go up here to the top again. Very, very top. There we go. And just go around one time. Watch the opening down there, around one time. Start at the top here again. There we go. Ooh, that jumped on me a little bit. Be careful. And maybe even a little higher. Maybe go up here even. There we go. And you gotta be careful because it jumps off the page. So you want to be top downish as you're doing a lot of these. And make sure you got a clear spot. Go down the bottom again and kind of fix that part that hopped up on me on accident. Go back into the entry and make sure that from the top down, get as top down as you can, that you can get in there still from that original path that we did. Now that path you may adjust, you may go higher and lower, etc. There's a bunch of stuff you could play with in there. Be a lot of fun. I'm just going to leave it like that for now. And then go back to, let's see, the height. Yeah, the height needs to be continued around the other side over here. So let's continue that from this side here all the way around to the other side, to the mouth of the volcano with said secret path. Okay. And there's a little pit. Watch out for that. All right, that should be good. Let's go back to the erosion tool one more time. I'm going to go to the edge of the mouth of the volcano again, start the edge, maybe make it a little bit bigger with a softer fall off again. There we go, and just erode right to the edge of the mouth of the volcano. But I want to make sure that the outer circle isn't going over the lip. So I want to keep it back, like right about there. Otherwise, if it goes past that lip, you're just going to cut it down again. So I want to make sure that I don't do that. So I'm going right to the lip and I'm hitting one time, backing off a little bit. So right to the edge of the volcano and tap one time. There we go. And just go around. And we definitely don't want that extra hill right there, because volcanoes don't usually have a secondary peak, right? So I don't really like that one at all. So let's flatten that back out again. So I'll go flatten down here and we'll just kind of chop that down. Same thing here. We'll kind of chop that down. Chop it down. Whoa. Gently and carefully. Okay, go back to erosion. Let's crank up the strength on this sucker and let's really chop down the edge of this volcano. There we go. It's looking better. And on the side here is looking better. Let's go see how it looks over here. Woof. Okay, hydro erosion next. So let's do a nice strong tool strength. Nice big brush. Here we go. And let's do hydro erosion. And all just gonna really just get down in the grooves, right? Make it even bigger. There it goes. And just slide that back and forth a few times. Back to erosion. There it goes. Woof. Really strong now. That's better. And you kind of fade and get a really nice gradual fade off the sides here. Yeah. So yeah, starting down lower and dragging erosion up seems to be working a little better. So dragging up into the edge of the mountain as opposed to starting at the top and trying to go down. Seems to be working better. I don't know. I have not mastered the erosion, hydro erosion per se, because it is, like I said, it is very much a beautiful visual feature, something you would do at the end maybe to polish, but we're just kind of spending some time in here with it to see. Yeah, that's looking pretty cool. Oof. Looks like that I hit the top on accident there. I might have just barely touched it. Bring it all the way down, or up, down and up. And start from the bottom, stroke up a few times. So give it a good 360, go all the way around your mountain, your volcano, whatever, your landmark. So you want to have a clear objective. You want to know, the player needs to know where they're supposed to go right away, uber clear. So we're creating that clarity with the goal of your current mission, current adventure is to get to the heart of the volcano. There's a giant volcano in front of you. Journey does this beautifully. There's tons of games you can reference that have nice landmarks. That is looking pretty good. You see it's pushing down over here, so you got to be careful when you get down to the playable area. Hydro erosion some more now. Let's mark that in. There it goes. So hydro erosion now has some areas to dig into, so to speak, so you can kind of let it do its thing around the edges here. Noise works pretty well too. So if we want to go in here, add some noise. Um, huh, Noise is not there anymore. I guess it may be a different mode type. Fine. Okay. So yeah, so we want to get to the mouth of the secret path of the volcano to finish this level off. So I'm going to go to the ramp tool. I'm going to start here at the bottom and work it to the top of that little piece and hit enter. And bam, there's our little ramp up. A little bit too narrow, so let's widen the ramp width out some more again, and then hit enter again, and activate the viewport, hit enter again. There we go. That seems to work pretty well. Go back to the regular sculpt tool. It's ginormous, right? So you're doing like macro view stuff, where we're going back to our regular playable area level design, level mapping. You want to make it more of a smallish size again. Okay, and then back to smooth that out a bit. And then we can get to the smaller area. Then you could go in here and you could erode it some more again, or hydro erode that down the corner. And then if you need to, do the ramp again. So you go ramp tool, and we could just do start and finish one more time, play with the width on there, hit enter, activate the window first, hit enter. There we go. And if I wanted to just really quickly finish this little path off to the side over here, let's do that. Let's go back to sculpt and nice big brush, and using the bracket keys, there we go. And we'll just kind of fill the rest of this in. So if you want to go running up the side of the hill, the player should have learned by then, with the way the level's currently set up, that it's going to dead end. You're not going to be able to run up the hills. If I wanted to hide the path, if we come around this corner, you can start to see the path all the way over there. Like I said, a little zigzagging helps a lot. So if it's you don't want it to be too obvious, you want to see it from the start, but maybe as you're traveling, you want to make some areas where you're not sure. You see, it shows me which paths my brush is going across. So it kind of gives you a little orange outline, which is pretty neat. All right, and be sure and save all. Make sure you don't lose what you started. Oh, I did not give it a file name yet. Oopsie. I've got to remember to do that. Okay, let's go to the player start here and just hit F on, select it, right click, activate your window, and hit F on the keyboard. Let's go in and spacebar is not shifting to rotate. That's really strange. Player start. I want to rotate this thing. Can I move it? Is it locked? I don't know. Oh, I'm stuck in landscape mode. That's strange. Okay, shift 1. Yep, forget. And then let's rotate the arrow so you're starting off facing the right direction, right? So now if I hit play, there we go. I start off facing my sunset. So it's a little exact, more than I'd want, but it's okay. So I can see now got a bit of a journey ahead of me if I want to do this. It's got a really super slow base speed. You can see a little bump up here. And you can see some of the jaggedy marks over there as well. So that's going to take a minute to run around there. So let's play with the player speed, and let's come back and we're going to play with the next set with this, which is the foliage brush. So we're going to go in here, drop some artifacts, some sculptures, and we're going to add some the giant mushroom valley to the volcano, and we'll play with the jump speed or the jump heights and the player speed and things like that. So we'll see you in the next set.